Namaste. Welcome to Indian Knowledge Systems Primer Course for Children. In the series of lectures in Indian astronomy, in this session we will be looking at the other three components of Panchanga, which is Nakshatra, Yoga and Karana. So, let's very quickly review through what we learnt in the Panchanga. Panchanga, as we saw, is an Indian calendrical system which is divided into 5 limbs, Pancha Anga. The limbs namely are Vara, Tithi, Nakshatra, Yoga and Karana. Vara, as we saw earlier, is the days of the week. Tithi is the lunar day. Nakshatra has got a lot to do with positioning the moon at a particular location in the ecliptic, which is the lunar constellation. Yoga is the luni-solar positional combination. It is the combination of the luni-solar position. And Karana is half of a lunar day. These are brief definitions of what these components are. We have already seen what Vara, Tithi are. Now we will delve into Nakshatra, Yoga and Karana in this session. So, the word Nakshatra means that which does not have Shaya. There is no Shaya. What does Shaya means? Shaya means decay. So, Nakshatra means that which does not decay is called as Nakshatra. That means that these are celestial bodies which are relatively constant for a very vast period of time. They have been constant for time immemorial. They have been so for such a long period of time. From an observer's point of view, these celestial bodies have been constant. So, what do we do with respect to identifying or calculating the nakshatra aspect is that we take the same ecliptic or the Bhachakra. But for Rashi or the Shauramasa calculation, we split it into 12. So, the same thing we will split it into 30 degrees. When we split it into 12 divisions, they had 30 degrees each, because the whole 360 degree chakra, Bhachakra, is divided into 12 parts. So, each part had a 30 degree angle. The same ecliptic for nakshatra will be divided into 27 equal parts. How many? 27. So, there will be 27 nakshatras starting from Ashwini and ending with Revati. Hence, each of the nakshatra will have an angular distance of 800 minutes or 13 degree 20 minutes. That will be the angular distance of each nakshatra. So, by nakshatra calculation, what are we trying to do? Nakshatra at any instant refers to the position of the moon in the Bhachakra. Please understand, the nakshatra calculation where we divide the whole of the Bhachakra into 27 equal parts of 13 degrees 20 minutes each is done so that we will be able to understand the positioning of the moon with respect to the Bhachakra at any instant of time. For example, if we say that the moon is in the 5th nakshatra, that means it is 5 multiplied by 13 degrees 20 minutes. If it is in the 3rd nakshatra, it will be 3 multiplied by 13 degrees 20 minutes and so on. So, it is like we will try to position it in that particular window. This is a simple visualization for us to understand. Consider the circle as that of the Bhachakra. Instead of dividing it into 12 for the Rashi Chakra, what are we doing? We are dividing it into 27 equal periods so that we will be able to position the moon with respect to the Bhachakra. So, the circle as we know it has 360 degrees. When we divide it into 27, each equal sector points will have 30 degree 20 minutes of angular distance. So, but all this is fine. Why do you have to divide it into 27 parts? Why should it be 27 parts? Why should there be 27 divisions? We will try to understand now. So, earlier we learnt something called a synodic period, did we? So, what is a synodic period? A synodic period is for the time period taken for an astronomical event to occur itself again. That is called as synodic period. An example that was given is one new moon to another new moon cycle. The time taken in between is called as synodic period. Similarly, we tried to briefly define what a sidereal period is in that particular lecture. We said that sidereal period is when we are able to see the same celestial body in the particular position, in the relative position in the sky again. For example, let us consider the Bhachakra. If you are able to see sun in Mesha Masa in this particular time of the year, and then again what is the time taken for it to come back to the Mesha Masa or Mesha Rashi is called as the sidereal period of the sun. So, similarly, we try to do it for moon with respect to nakshatras. That is why we divided into 27 equal parts, because the mean value of sidereal period of the revolution of the moon in mean solar days, meaning let us take the number of solar days, which is 24-hour duration. So, with respect to the number of solar days, if you consider the mean sidereal period of revolution of moon, it is 27.32166 days, which is 27 days, 7 hours and 43.19 minutes. So, that is the mean sidereal period value of moon. So, what does this actually mean, the sidereal period? It completes the revolution of earth. Moon completes the revolution of earth in 27.3 odd days. So, every day that means every time it takes 27 days for it to come back to Ashwini Nakshatra. We will try to understand how the naming of the nakshatras, how they were sequenced, all that shortly. But for now, let us take the example of the moon. The position of moon with respect to Bhachakra is that of in the first nakshatra, which is Ashwini. So, it takes 27 days to come back to Ashwini again. This is from the observer's point of view from earth. Okay. So, likewise there are 27 nakshatras, so it keeps traversing one nakshatra. So, in a little more than a day, one nakshatra it will cover very slowly, minute by minute it will cover, and almost when it comes back to the same nakshatra again, it would have been 27 days by then. So, we also have with respect to the Indian tradition, we also have aspects of Janma Nakshatra and Janma Rashi. Have you ever wondered what these are? So, what we try to do is the position, which is the positional data. When an individual takes birth, the positional data of the moon and the sun with respect to the Bhachakra is what is called as Janma Nakshatra and Janma Rashi respectively. So, we are talking about more like a geospatial map as to when you were born. You know, when you were born, you will have to tell the date, the time where you were born and stuff like that. So, we also try to position it at a geospatial level. Isn't that quite interesting? So, we have been always very accurate with respect to timekeeping, one can say. So, take up the example of when you were born. If somebody says that I am born in Dhanishta Nakshatra, that means at the time of their birth, the moon would have been placed in the Dhanishta Nakshatra in the Bhachakra. Similarly, the sun would have ideally been in the Lagna of say Mesha Lagna. So, that is how you clearly position it. In the ecliptic, the sun and moon positions are marked in the ecliptic with respect to identifying an individual's time of birth. So, that level of sophistication we had achieved at that time itself. So, hence when we say, we can take up the example of the very famous example of Bhagavan Shri Krishna. So, when we say in the Indian tradition, when we say that Bhagavan Krishna was born in Rohini Nakshatra, that means his Janma Nakshatra is that of Rohini. That means that when he took birth, the moon's position was in the Nakshatra of Rohini with respect to the Bhachakra, and it was in Meena Rashi. The sun was in Meena Rashi. So, his Rashi with respect to the Nakshatra also we categorize them based on Rashis. That we will see a little later in this session itself. So, he would be ascribed to Rohini Nakshatra in Meena Rashi. the nakshatra, now we can understand, is a way of dividing the ecliptic into 13 degree 20 minutes equal angular sectors, so that we will be able to understand the absolute position of moon. That is the whole point of nakshatras. Moving ahead. So, we have seen that there are 27 nakshatras. How many? 27 nakshatras. We will try to see very quickly what are they and how does the division happen. Nakshatra per se, now you would have understood that which does not decay is called as a nakshatra, and in relevance to Pancha Anga, nakshatra is specifically not about a particular star, but it is about how do we find the absolute position of moon. For that we map it with the respective star. A nakshatra means a star astronomically, but with respect to our calendrical system, the significance is on positioning the moon very absolutely. So, or rather positioning the moon in the 13 degree 20 minute ecliptic is called a nakshatra. So, what do we try to do? How do we name it as one particular nakshatra? Is that we take up this 13 degree 20 minute lune or 13 degree 20 minute sector is taken and a yoga tara is identified. What are yoga taras? One can identify yoga tara as a bright star which is very close to the segment, or rather equally positioned in the segment. So, it is an arc, no? When you see that 13 degree 20 minute arc, you will try to find that one prominent star or some star that has been equally positioned. All of this you will try to identify. That is called as yoga tara. That is given certain names such as Ashwini, Bharani, Kritika, Rohini, etc. The 27 names are that of these yoga taras. How do we understand this? Let us try to understand it with an analogy. So, now let us say there are 10 people. There are 10 cricketers. We try to divide them into 2 groups. Okay. So, one group we can say, we call the one group as Dhoni's team, the other group as Rohit Sharma's team. So, when we say that, what are we trying to say is that a group or a group of people who have their captain as Dhoni, or one among them is Dhoni. Similarly, we do it for the other group wherein the captain is Rohit Sharma, or one among them is a prominent player such as Rohit Sharma. So, that is an identification mechanism for a group of people, right. Similarly, for this 13 degree 20 minute arc, we identify yoga taras. It can be, like I mentioned earlier, equally positioned between the 13 degree 20 minute distance, or it can be a very prominent bright star which has lived the test of time and things like that. Similarly, you see that the nakshatras are also serially ordered. So, you start from first comes Ashwini, Bharani, Kritika, Rohini, Mrigashira, Aridra, Punarvasu, Pushya and Ashlesha. These are the first 9 set of stars. All these 9 are written here. They also, in the next column, if you see, the yoga taras, the names of the yoga taras are also very specifically mentioned, which is the modern equivalent of these names, wherein Ashwini is called as Beta Aritis and Bharani is called as 41 Aritis and so on and so forth. For example, Rohini, if you see, is Alpha Tauri and etc. This is basically in the Western method of identifying. We have identified these stars to be similar here and to be anywhere in the 13 degree 20 minute segment. Their longitude, the longitude, for example, the longitude of Ashwini, if you see here, is 10 degree and 7 minutes. That means in the first 13 degree 20 minute segment, it is, you can see the Ashwini star exactly at the 10 degree 7 minutes, which is a prominent star in that particular segment, and so on and so forth. For example, if you see Bharani, Bharani is in the 24 degree 21 minute arc. That is the longitudinal position of the yoga tara. So, similarly, such positionings exact positionings with respect to the ecliptic is also given. Sorry. So, we can understand that when we say that the moon is in this particular nakshatra, when we say during my Janma nakshatra the moon was in Dhanishta, that means we are referring to this particular longitudinal position. In this particular arc it was there. We will be able to see it that way, we will be able to exactly calculate the time that way. Okay, good. Now, let us move on to the next set of nakshatras. So, first 9 we have seen, there are 2 more sets of 9 each. So, the next 9 starts with Magha, Purva Falguni, Uttara Falguni, Hasta, Chitra, Swati, Vishaka, Anuradha and Jeshta. These are the next set. They also have their equivalent western names, their exact longitudes, all of that is given in this table very clearly. So, they are mapped, they are also mapped with particular stars in the sky and their longitudinal positioning is also listed in these tables. It is a very data intensive table, but these are useful for various aspects. The last set of 9 nakshatras are listed here. They start with Moola, Purva Ashada, Uttara Ashada, Shravana, Dhanishta, Shatabisha, Purva Bhadrapada, Uttara Bhadrapada, ending with Revati. Like we seen in the earlier slides, they also have their respective western names and the longitudinal position listed here in the table. Going forward, so all of this is fine. So, we have understood that there are about 27 nakshatras. We have equally divided the Bha Chakra into 27 equal pieces, so that we will be able to find the absolute position of the moon. We identified yoga taras in each of these 13° 20' segment, which could be a prominent star or which could be a star that has lived the test of time, which would have been like equally distanted in the 13° 20' arc and so on and so forth. So, that said, sometimes some nakshatras can span over 2 rashis. What does that even mean? Let us try to understand. So, we earlier saw, to understand the Rashi Chakra, we divided the whole of the Bha Chakra into 12 aspects, 12 equal divisions. So, if we put a nakshatra in one particular aspect, sometimes the nakshatra can span over to the next Rashi as well. That is also an option. For example, if you take up first nakshatra, which is Ashwini, that spans for a distance of 13° 20'. So, it will be completely in the Mesha Rashi. Take the next nakshatra Bharani, which will be the next 13° 20'. So, it is 26° 40'. That will still be in Mesha Rashi. So, 2 nakshatras in Mesha Rashi are covered. If you again go to Mesha Rashi if you see, it will be from 0 to 30 degrees, right? Because you are equally dividing 360 degrees into 12, which will be 30 degrees each. Each division will have 30 degrees. So, we have already covered with Ashwini and Bharani, we have already covered 26° 40'. So, whatever is left out, that will be the remaining nakshatra, which is Kritika. So, among these nakshatras, they are divided into 4 padas, 4 equal padas. So, the first pada will be in Mesha Rashi, whereas the other 3 padas will be covered in the next Rashi, which is Rishabha Rashi. So, this is how the calculation goes on. So, one can understand that nakshatra is nothing but a finer division of the ecliptic or the Bha Chakra in total, so that we would be able to find a way to position the moon absolutely at any given time. So, every day to know the absolute position of the moon, it will take about, we know that it takes about roughly 13° 20' of traversing per day for the moon. So, we always position the moon with respect to the nakshatra in the Bha Chakra. That way, we will know in which segment of the sky the moon is in right now with respect to the stars. So, what are we doing? We are taking stars as the referential background. We are trying to map the moon on that particular day with respect to the segment in the Bha Chakra using the stars. That is what we are trying to do using the nakshatra calculation. Going forward, let us now try to understand how the nakshatra division happens. So, we saw each nakshatra division is named after a selected star called as the Yoga Tara, which is either, like I mentioned earlier, generally very prominent or traditionally well known, and is sometimes also broadly equi-spaced in the zodiac. Zodiac means the Rashi. It will be equi-spaced in the Rashi. That is also an option. So, these are all ways of fixing up a Yoga Tara. These are all the ways that has been used to fix up. This is the Yoga Tara. This is the nakshatra name we will be referring to for that particular 13 degree 20 minute segment. Okay. So, these identification of the stars, these stars are called as Yoga Taras and are mostly located in the loon covering the nakshatra division or the segment. Loon is nothing but the arc segment, that is called the loon. Hence, nakshatra in Panchanga, what does it essentially mean? The absolute position of moon in that particular day. That is what it is going to mean. That is why nakshatra is also taken as one of the critical angas in the Panchanga, in the Indian calendrical system. Moving ahead. So, we have understood 3 aspects of Panchanga, Vara, Tithi and Nakshatra. We have understood till now. Let us move on to Yoga. The word Yoga literally means addition. This item of Panchanga means that it's a summation calculation. So, it's a sum calculation. What are we calculating? The sum of the longitudes of the sun and the moon is what is called as Yoga, and it is amounting for a multiple of 13 degree 20 minutes. It will be integral multiples of 13 degree 20 minutes. That is what is defined as Yoga. What are we doing? We will take the longitude of the sun, longitude of the moon, we will sum it and make it into multiples of, integral multiples of 13 degree 20 minutes. Then that is what we will define as Yoga. So, the first Yoga is called as Vishkamba. It amounts for 13 degree 20 minutes length, and the second Yoga after 13 degree 20 minutes, the second Yoga commences, which is Preeti. Similarly, at 26 degree 40 minutes, Preeti ends and it commences the third Yoga called as Ayushman, and so on. It goes on for all the 360 degrees. The last Yoga, which is Vaidhriti, ends when the sum becomes 360 degrees, and the first Yoga, Vishkamba, starts all over again. It is essentially a sum of the longitudinal positions of the sun and the moon in multiples of 13 degree 20 minutes. That is all. It is a simple calculation. So, like we said, the Yoga at any moment can be found by dividing the sum of the longitude of the sun and the moon. You divide it by 13 degree 20 minutes. The quotient will give the serial number of the Yoga. So, Yoga also we saw it is in a cyclical sequence. So, the quotient will give the serial number of the Yoga that got expired. Okay. So, when we divide the sum of the longitude of the sun and the moon by 13 degree 20 minutes, the quotient will give the serial number of the Yoga that got expired, and the remainder will give the elapsed part of the current Yoga. Okay. So, let us say if the sum, for example, if sun is in 0 degree and let us say moon is in 13 degree 20 minutes roughly. So, then the sum will be 13 degree 20 minutes. So, when you divide 13 degree 20 minutes by again 13 degree 20 minutes, what will be the quotient? It will be 1. So, first Yoga is over, which is Vishkamba is over. It got expired. What is the remaining? The remainder here is 0. That means second Yoga has begun, but it has not started. It has just begun. No time has elapsed. It has just begun. That is what this whole calculation means. Yoga. So, we need to understand that Yoga is entirely an arbitrary device. It does not convey any physical or a geospatial conception per se. It is only for, it's like, when we go into divisions of time, now we say, hours, minutes, and then seconds, and then sometimes we go to microseconds, nanoseconds and so on and so forth. These are tinier divisions, no? Similarly, yoga is also pretty an arbitrary device. It's an arithmetic instrument, but not necessarily any geospatial instrument, but this still helps in accurately calculating the time. For that, yoga is used. So, now we can see these are all the different names of the yoga. We can see that there are 27 different yogas as well. Vishkamba, Preeti, Ayushman, Saubhagya, Shobhana, Atigandha, Sukarma, etc. We see so many yogas. There are 27 of them listed before you. So, now let us move on to the last limb of the Panchanga, which is the Karana. Karana is defined as half of a Tithi Mana. Mana means measurement. Tithi, you know, is a lunar day. So, half of it, half a Tithi is called as Karana. We already know that there are 30 Tithis divided across 2 Pakshas, Shukla and Krishna Paksha. So, that means we will easily think, so 30 Tithis are there, each Tithi is divided into 2, that becomes one Karana. So, we will have 60 Karanas, because that is how we named the yogas also. We had 27 divisions of nakshatra, we had 27 nakshatras. We had 27 divisions of yoga, so we have 27 yogas, so on. So, we easily think that there will be 60 Karanas. But the numbering of Karana is slightly restricted, and it is not so easy as we or straightforward as we think. You know, it does not have the same pattern as we followed for the Tithis, Nakshatras or the yogas. It is not. So, here the Karana naming itself is classified into 2. One is called as Charakarana, those that are cyclical. Chara means cyclical or moving. So, Charakaranas are that which are very cyclical. There are 7 such Charakaranas, namely Bhava, Bhalava, Kaulava, Taitila, Ghara, Vanij, Vishti. These are the 7 Charakaranas. There are 4 more Karanas which are not cyclical, which are special Karanas. These are called as Sthira Karanas, or rather stable Karanas, namely Shakuni, Naga, Chatushpada, Kimtugna or Kimstugna, both mean the same. So, these are Sthira Karanas. So, we have seen that like Tithi Nakshatra Yoga, the Karana classification is not so very straightforward, but we have few cyclical Karanas which are 7 and few 4 numbered are Sthira Karanas which are stable or special Karanas. And we also saw that Karana means half a Tithi Mana. Half a Tithi is called as Karana. It is a certain way to reference that this is the part we are talking about. This is the time of the day. This part of the time of the day is what we are talking about. That is what we try to achieve when we talk about Karana. Okay. So, now moving on, we see these are all the ways of listing the Karanas. Now, if you see in the first column, the Tithi column on both the sides, S1 to S15 is the Shukla Paksha side, the first 15 Tithis starting from Shukla Paksha starts from, yes, new moon. So, Amavasya going till Purnima. And K1 to K13 is then again Pratama, starts with Pratama going till Amavasya. So, if you see S1 is the Shukla Paksha Pratama and S15 will be the Paurnami. K1 is the Krishna Paksha Pratama going till K13, K15 which is Amavasya. It is wrongly marked as K30, it is actually K15 which is Krishna Paksha. Last Tithi is the Amavasya Tithi. So, this is the whole cycle we have seen. So, now, Karana, now this is one Tithi we know. So, one Tithi should have 2 Karanas we know, but the 2 Karanas, among the 2 Karanas we have special Karanas and a few other Karanas, the other 7 Karanas are all cyclic. So, if you see Shukla Paksha Pratama Tithi, first half Karana, first half which is one Karana, that is called as Kimtugna. That Karana is Kimtugna. Otherwise, the Chara Karana starts and it will go in cyclic order. If you see Bhava Balava Kaulava Taitilagara Vanij Vishti. Again, Bhava Balava Kaulava Taitilagara Vanij Vishti. Again, it keeps on happening till it comes to S15. S15 is what? Shukla Paksha Purnima. So, Shukla Pakshala Purnima Tithi. So, Purnima Tithi, it ends with Bhava. So, the cyclical Karana is still happening. So, it ends with Bhava. Then moves on to Krishna Paksha. Krishna Paksha Prathama Tithi starting will be again Bhalava, Kaulava, and it goes on in the cyclical order. But when you come to Krishna Paksha Chaturdashi, later half, the second Karana is called as Shakuni. Similarly, Krishna Paksha 15th Tithi, which is the Amavasya Tithi, first Karana is called as Naga, and Amavasya second Karana is called as Chatushpada. So, you need to understand like how we were calculating the position of the stars using the Tithis and and the Nakshatras. These don't necessarily have a these are arithmetic calculations rather, so that as we were saying, if you slowly look at the star, whichever Karana's name is there, we will put in that star. So, you can see in this table itself, wherever there is a star, an asterisk marking near the Karana name, those are Sthira Karanas, stable Karanas or special Karanas. They do not go in a cyclic order, only that particular spread of time period is called as that particular Karana. We do not use the Karana name elsewhere at all, because if you say Bhava Karana, you can get confused between Pratama, Shukla Paksha Pratama second half, and similarly even Krishna Paksha Ekadashi first half, you do not know which Bhava you are talking about. But when you say Chatushpada, you will clearly know we are talking about Amavasya second Karana. Similarly, when I say Naga, Amavasya first Karana. Similarly, when I say Kimtugna, I am talking about Shukla Paksha Pratama first Karana. So, such specific mentions were generally given so that these are very unique names, no? They are generally given so that some particular rites and observations, rituals can be carried out during this particular time. That is why these specific names were ideally to be given for Karana naming. It is like roughly, it is like setting an alarm bell, So, when I say I will do this in the Kimtugna Karana, I mean that when the Shukla Paksha Pratama starts, I will work on this. So, yeah. So, now you understood what is Karana, how are they divided, and how the naming happened and all of this. We can also clearly see this is the fifth Anga of the Panchanga. What are all the Angas we saw? Vara, Tithi, Nakshatra, Yoga and Karana. Unlike Tithi and Nakshatra, even Vara to some extent was a bit of an arithmetical calculation. It didn't necessarily have an astronomical significance per se. And Yoga and Karana further are further calculations so that we will be able to very precisely record the time. That is why they were all done. So, now let us reflect back. Now, we should know that we should clearly understand the Tithi Nakshatra calculations because they have a strong astronomical significance. These two are important factors that play a role in our everyday societal life also. Because every day we will see what is the Tithi, what is the Nakshatra. We always calculate, even now we calculate. The Panchanga very clearly elucidates the Tithi and the Nakshatra of that particular day. And a lot of Indian tradition, a lot of festivals and all of that take place in closer association with these Tithi and Nakshatra. So, what does all of this signify? We have been talking elaborately about what was the Indian astronomical tradition, how enriched it was in knowledge, how precise it was, what a huge body of knowledge it encompasses. We also saw how the Indian calendrical system was designed. So, what does all this signify? It signifies that the Indian calendrical system, which was tightly coupled with the astronomical events and not necessarily a very plain arithmetic one, was very dynamic and a very, very sophisticated instrument. We can keep aside Vara alone, which was more of a nomenclature, to, it's more of a labeling mechanism. But the other 4 aspects of Indian calendrical system, the other 4 aspects of the Panchanga, which is the Tithi, Nakshatra, Yoga, Karana, were all based on the true positions of sun and moon. It's tightly coupled. We are coupling the whole timekeeping with the astronomical phenomena of the positions of the sun and moon in the Ba Chakra specifically. So, hence, our lunisolar calendar is not a very, you can understand, it is not a simple calendar. We are taking aspects of the moon, aspects of the sun. We are also involving all the dynamicities that will, happen because of an elliptical orbit. All of this we are including. So, it is not a very linear, straightforward arithmetic calendar, but it is a very, very dynamic calendar. Hence, one can also understand that preparation of such a calendar requires an elaborate effort. So, in our life also, using the Indian calendrical system is considered to be a highly sophisticated way of living, where a nuanced and a highly organized and an evolved way of living around this was taken care of. All our rites, rituals, festivals, gatherings, all of this was very, very clearly mapped with the Panchanga system. You would have definitely heard of this word, Muhurta, generally for any function, be it Punya Janam or be it, Pumsavana, be it anything, Upanayana, all of these samskara functions, they will be marked in a specific Muhurta. Sorry. A Muhurta is basically 2 gatis. We also see the gati system when we were trying to do the Vara calculation. What is a gati? We saw 1 gati is 24 minutes. So, Muhurta is 2 gatis together. 48 minutes is a Muhurta. So, Muhurta's duration we saw is about 48 minutes. Like this, we have very clearly organized our time and we celebrated various events. A Muhurta, identifying and marking a Muhurta for functions such as, Pumsavana or, for Upanayana is very, very critical. We always refer to the Panchanga and we identify the Muhurta. We also involve aspects such as what are all the Janma Nakshatra and the Janma Rashi involved for the Vadu, or for the person who is going to go through that samskara. All of this is taken into consideration when we talk about fixing a particular time for a societal or for a social function, because that is how deep ingrained and sophisticated our timekeeping mechanisms were. And all of this, the whole of this timekeeping happened based on the celestial positions. Isn't this very fascinating? So, that way our timekeeping was more accurate with respect to the periodicities of these celestial bodies. And it is not just some arbitrary, 1, 2, 3, 4 counting. It is not like that. It was very, very highly calculative, highly sophisticated. A lot of dimensions were taken into consideration, and hence the Indian calendrical system, while being robust, is also very, very, very dynamic. So, in this Indian astronomical course, we were able to see a glimpse of all such, at least some aspects we were able to see a glimpse of it. It is not to overwhelm the listeners, but it is to give a taste of what level of mathematical rigor and what level of elaborate calculations have been taken into consideration to prepare and publish such an instrument as sophisticated as the Indian calendrical system. Looking at these, we should also develop the eye of appreciation for such nuanced calendrical system, which has a very, which encompasses such astronomical events, which now we use very sophisticated instruments such as telescope and all of that. We have a space station and all of that to watch these. But during those ancient days itself, we were able to take such astronomical phenomenon into account, and not just that, observe them, use them as a measurement of calculation, and bring about an instrument that can be even used for the wellness and the good of the common people. Isn't this a very profound thought process? So, this definitely opens our eyes to, appreciating what level of rigor and what level of sophistication and deep entrenched knowledge, our Indian astronomers, our Indian mathematical scholars have always had. That is critically one of the primary objective of this course as well, to make us understand what body of knowledge we have inherited. It is with such pride that we conclude this Indian astronomy series of lecture. Thank you.